Okay, I'll try to give you a good overview of what this third assignment is all about. So I'll use I guess I'll use a 3 by that's not what I want to do. I'll use a 4 by 6 array of dots, and you can use a 4 by 6 array too. You can't do the same thing that I'm doing. It's some paper, but you can use this if you want, or if you want to use some other array that has 2 components. The idea is that it will have 2 components if the least common denominator of these 2 dimensions is 2. So let's work this thing out. So if I want a 4 by 6, right? So this is my starting point. I'm going to start off with this, and let's fill this in. So there's should probably actually pause the video, and I may. So there's 1 component, and I guess I'll add to the directions that we maybe do this in different colors. It'll be easier for you to see and easier for me to see how many components are running around here. So that's my 4 by 6. This is 2 linear, it requires 2 pieces. Now for number 2, I'm going to insert a break line, and I mentioned keeping it symmetric. Well, there's a couple ways of doing that. Remember that for a break line, you can't quite see it well in the video here. Maybe I should go over this with a brighter color. Here's that other path. For a break line to actually reduce the number of curves in a Sona, it has to cut across 2 of them. So cutting over here wouldn't help. Cutting over here would. So this would be the place, which is convenient. It's right in the middle, so 3 on each side. And so if I go over here, I'm going to do my 4 by 6 again. I'm going to place a break line right here, and I'll redo the figure. So, something like, yep, come on in. All right, so let's see here. So there's that break line. And there's the other part. So there, I have a monolinear 4 by 6. That's number 2. Number 3, oh, excuse me. Use path extension without joining to add some design element to your path. So I'm deliberately doing a fairly large grid here. I figure you may want to do a little smaller one. So I have a couple options here. Let me discuss while I'm here. The whole idea of path extension is really that any of these rounded ends can be extended without changing the monolinearity. So I could elongate a couple of these. I don't know, make the gaping jaw of a monster or some sort of thing. So maybe I'll do that. All right. And for this, it's going to be pretty helpful, I think, to do this with pencils first, because I'm going to want to elongate these afterwards. So, maybe I'll go through. Whoops. Good to use a pencil for lots of reasons. I'll go through and fill up the grid. All right. And now I have this. Now I can think about, what do I want to have? Maybe, now if you're using grid paper like this, you're going to end up with some dots. If you want, you can just put little X's through them, or make me a note. But you certainly don't have to make some scary monster-looking thing. But oh, I don't know. So this could be claws, or it could be some sort of mouth, or whatever. Or you could do something else. You could make these into, say, legs. Maybe these are two people that are hugging or something. These are the legs. They're leaning in for a hug. Or maybe this represents soulmates. While they have separate bodies, they're joined at the heart. The heart being somewhere in here. Or, you can do all kinds of things. If you wanted these to represent, soulmates, you could also kind of elongate, these things here, make arms. And you could also, it's a little harder to put in here, but you could I don't have room. You can do a little loop that you'll see on some Sona to represent, heads. And again, the explanation can be these are two people that are connected. The break line represents the attempt to drive people apart, but in attempting to drive people apart, which you have two curves, it actually brings them together in this monolinear, this one curve that unites people, or two people of a common thread. Or for some of you, this will be probably pretty stupid. You're not going to like it, so you can just draw some things or something or whatever. For some of you, I expect you'll enjoy the creative aspect of this and messing around with different meanings that this might represent. And again, these elongations can be as long as you like. They can be highly stylized. They can include loops or whatnot. So you can be quite creative here. Once you've done that, then go ahead and trace over it. And maybe I'll keep the heads here. And again, you can't just replicate what I've done. You will have to think of something of your own. I apologize if I scooped you on an idea. So there we go. That's number 3. Now, number 4, we want to connect 2 of the Sona and 3 using path extension with joining. So I have a very big Sona here, so I'm going to go ahead and so let me set up the grid, and then I'll fill everything in while pausing. So ultimately here on my grid sheet, I need a lot of room. I need more than just my 4x6. Looks like I should probably take maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 high, and go over, say, 7. Maybe something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then over 7. So I might need a chunk of space like this, and then I'll place the other one. Maybe we can connect them over however you want. They could be holding hands or something. Do I have room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I do have room, so I can do something like this. So I've got a couple boxes here, and my actual Sona for each of these is going to sit inside of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and fill all that in, and I'll unpause the video. Okay, just wanted to show you. I did it out in pencil, and I think this is a good idea. I'm going to pause again and reconstruct these path extensions. Again, you have your choice of how these are overlapped. I'm going to overlap the hands across here. You can do whatever you want. Begin working out with pencil first. Makes a lot of sense, so you can erase and clean up your work as you go along. Okay, let me do that. All right, I've gone ahead and done my path extensions and also the path extension with joining, and I've marked over it. Also, if your descriptions are fairly short, you can include them alongside your drawings, or if you want, you could include them on a separate piece of paper. Yeah, it's up to you. So this would be number 4. Now, number 5, I'll have to do on a separate piece of paper. This is where we basically come to identify these 2 points. You can kind of imagine like a motion picture whereby these 2 points come together and get joined. So we have lots of ways we could think about how we want to do that. I could have these 2 figures at right angles to one another. Or if you're thinking about this ahead of time in pencil, You might decide, oh, I don't like that. I want these figures sort of offset. So maybe it's a hand grabbing onto a foot, people, whatever. You could make up some context of people are joined together, but they still rely on a greater community for help, or again, these don't have to represent physical objects. They can be representative of ideas, and they can also be representative of paths. Some stories with the Sona feature these lines as actually being physical paths walked by some creature or person, and the dots represent locations. It's, again, really up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and do that path extension with contraction, and I'll show you the result. All right, you can see what I've done here. I've just kind of sketched out the figure. They were, holding hands previously, and I've shrunk that into this. So, as we become, again, you can think of an interpretation. As we become closer together, we become closer to other people. And then there's some, these end up being quite close together. So who knows? You could think of something here to do, something artistic. You can just make the head smaller, or you could think about something to do there that could play into your story or your interpretation. I like creative acts. I find them rewarding. I do hope you do too. Worst case scenario, you can be quite literal with your interpretation. So I've done this. You can see there's various little things I've had to erase and fix and whatnot. It's pretty usual. I'm going to go ahead and ink over this, and then I'll pop back in. All right, so I've gone ahead and inked it in, and again, I made a mistake over here, which is kind of good for you to see. That's okay. If you want to do a much nicer job, I applaud that. I probably would too. But I want you to know that this would be fine with a good explanation that explains why these are contracted, that gives some meaning to it. So this is number 5. Now, to go back to number 6, I'm going to take the Lusona I designed here, and I'm going to add a square onto it. And you can add more than one square. There's a minimum of adding a square. Maybe I want to add 2 squares here for symmetry, or maybe I don't. Let's think about it. Sorry about that. We get motion sickness. So what do I need? I need again a 4x6 array with a break line here, and I'm going to fill that in first with pencil, and then think about where I want to add. Well, actually, I can add the square right now. I could add the square in the middle of the 2 heads, as obstacles can attempt to come between. And depending on how you're interpreting the monolinearity, in this case, I'm clearly leaning towards some storyline where the monolinearity has a meaning, and that it indicates a unifying element, some common thread connecting these people together. And so maybe adding a 2x2 square at the top represents obstacles attempting to come between these individuals, but despite that, they remain monolinear, they remain connected, they're not separated. And, again, pencils are good here, because it's not going to take very much before this Sona is rather sophisticated. I've already made a mistake here, I can tell. So let me go ahead and erase it. I'm going to pause this, I'll erase it, and I'll cue back in. All right, so I fixed my mistake. Sometimes you just have to try from a couple of different directions, and you can figure out what's going on. So I got my pencil marks in here, and I hope you appreciate, as you're going along here, the complexity of design that you've ended up with here. This sort of immense design which can be done with just one tracing. Even if in practice you have to pause occasionally and lift your markers up, the folks practicing this originally created designs like the Sona that were even more complicated, that could be done with a single pass of the finger, rapidly in silence, and then explain the significance of these things. So if you find it difficult, then hopefully we just gain some respect for another tradition of problem solving. And I'll pause there.